My sister moved into my parents' house. Then she found a locked box with my name on it. I didn't cry when Brittany called to tell me she was moving back in with our parents. I cried 20 minutes later, alone in my car, engine off, because some part of me already knew what that house did to people who stayed in it too long. My name is Emily Carraway. I'm 31, married almost 2 years to a man named Daniel, who still leaves the porch light on for me even when I'm only running to the pharmacy. I have a small graphic design studio above a dry cleaner's, 3 regular clients who pay on time, and a mother who has never once asked to see my portfolio. Brittany is 26. She just left her apartment in the city, a breakup, she said, though I later learned it was closer to an eviction, and our parents didn't hesitate. They cleared out the guest room the same week. That room used to be mine, technically, back before I moved out at 19 and never really moved back. I want to be fair here. I'm not going to pretend I hated my sister growing up. I loved her, the way you love someone you were told to share everything with, including the things that were supposed to be only yours. Brittany got the room with the bay window. Brittany got the car for her 16th birthday, brand new, while I'd been handed the keys to our mother's old sedan at 17 and told to be grateful. Brittany got the college fund untouched. I got a partial scholarship and $11,000 in loans I finished paying off 2 years ago. None of that is dramatic enough to build a story around. It's just the quiet math of a family that decided early on which daughter it was rooting for. The call that mattered came on a Tuesday, close to 9 at night. Brittany's voice had that particular brightness she uses when she wants something to sound smaller than it is. "So I found this box," she said, "in the attic. It's got your name on it." "What kind of box?" "Locked. Metal. Dad's old filing cabinet key doesn't fit it." A pause, the sound of her walking somewhere with the phone still against her ear. "Mom got weird when she saw me holding it." "Weird how?" "She told me to put it back and then she left the room." I remember looking over at Daniel, who was reading on the couch, and how he lowered his book about an inch, just enough to catch my expression without asking anything yet. "Did you open it?" I asked Brittany. "It's locked, Em. I just told you that." "Right." I sat down slowly. "Why does it have my name on it?" "I don't know. That's why I'm calling you and not Mom." That last part landed harder than she probably meant it to, because it meant Brittany, for all her carelessness, understood that going to our mother with this would get her nowhere. It meant she already suspected there was something in that house our mother didn't want found. I grew up believing our family didn't keep real secrets. Small lies, sure, the kind about who ate the last slice of cake, or why Dad was late again, but nothing with weight. It's strange how long you can hold on to an idea like that, even after small cracks start showing. The first crack came 2 days later, when I drove out to the house under the excuse of dropping off a jacket Brittany had left at our place. My mother met me at the door before I'd even knocked, which she never does. "She shouldn't have called you about that," she said, not bothering to say hello first. "About what?" "The box." My mother's hand moved to smooth her hair, a habit she only does when she's deciding how much to say. "It's nothing. Old paperwork from your grandfather's side. I've been meaning to sort through it." "Then why is my name on it?" "Emily." She said it the way she used to when I was 12 and asking a question she didn't have a good answer for. "It's not what you think." "I don't think anything yet. That's the problem." She didn't respond to that. She just held the door open wider, which in my family has always meant the conversation is over. I should have pushed harder that day. I've thought about it more times than I can count since. But there's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from growing up second favorite. You learn to pick your fights the way you pick your grocery budget, carefully, because you know you don't get unlimited turns. The second crack came from Walter Hendricks, though I didn't know his name yet when Brittany first mentioned him. There was a business card taped to the bottom of the box, she told me over coffee the following week. The two of us sitting at the small table in my studio because she said the house felt too full lately, even with just 3 people in it. Some estate attorney, Hendricks and something. I looked him up. He's like 70, still practicing out of an office downtown. Why would Mom have an estate attorney's card taped to a locked box with my name on it? Brittany turned her coffee cup slowly on the table, not drinking it. I asked her. She said it was left over from when Grandpa Carraway passed. Grandpa's been gone 12 years. I know. She looked up at me then, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, she didn't look like she was performing for anyone. I think something's wrong here. That sentence from Brittany meant more than it should have. My sister has never been the type to notice when something's wrong until it's already sitting in her lap. If she was noticing now, it meant whatever this was had gotten too big to ignore even from the outside. I called Daniel from the parking lot afterward, the two of us running through it out loud the way we do when a problem needs company more than it needs solving. "You could just call the attorney," he said. "And say what? Hi, I found your card on a locked box that apparently belongs to me." Something like that. It's not illegal to ask a question, Em. He was right, obviously. He usually is about the practical parts. It's the reason I said yes to him in the first place. He doesn't tell me how to feel. He just clears a path toward figuring it out. Walter Hendricks's office smelled like old paper and peppermint, and he had the kind of handshake that told you he'd been doing this since before I was born. "Carraway," he repeated when I gave him my name. Something shifted behind his eyes, quick, almost missable. "You'd be Robert and Diane's daughter." "Yes, Emily." He studied me a moment longer than felt comfortable, then gestured toward the chair across from his desk. "I was wondering when one of you would come asking." "One of us?" "You, specifically. Not your sister." He opened a drawer, moved a few folders aside, and pulled out a thin manila envelope, worn soft at the corners like it had been handled many times over many years. "Your grandfather set some things aside before he passed. There was a condition attached. I've been holding this for longer than I'm entirely comfortable with, if I'm honest with you." "What condition?" "That it be given to you directly, once you asked, not before." He slid the envelope halfway across the desk, then stopped, his hand still resting on it. "Your parents came to me 6 years ago and asked me to release the contents to them instead. I declined. It wasn't theirs to have. I felt something tighten low in my chest, not quite fear, not quite anger, something in between that didn't have a clean name. Why would they want it?" He didn't answer that directly. Instead, he said, "I think you should read it yourself before you decide what questions to ask next." I didn't open the envelope in his office. I waited until I was home, sitting across from Daniel at our kitchen table, the overhead light doing that soft yellow thing it does in the evenings. Inside was a letter in my grandfather's handwriting, shaky in places, and a folded document beneath it, a deed. Not to the house I grew up in, to a smaller property, a 2-bedroom bungalow 40 minutes outside town, one I'd never once heard mentioned in 22 years of family dinners. The letter was short. "Emily, you were the one who used to sit with me on the porch and ask questions nobody else bothered to ask. This house was your grandmother's before it was mine, and I want it to belong to someone who'll actually sit on that porch and mean it. Your parents don't know I'm leaving you this outright, and I'd rather you hear it from paper than from them trying to explain it away. Don't let anyone talk you out of what's yours. Grandpa." I read it twice before I said anything. "They knew," I said finally. "This whole time, they knew there was a house sitting empty with my name on the deed, and they never told me." Daniel didn't say anything right away. He just reached over and took my hand, which was somehow the exact right response, because there wasn't a version of comforting words that would have actually helped in that moment. "Why would they hide that from you?" he said eventually, "instead of just telling you and being done with it?" That was the question that kept me up that night. Not the house itself. I didn't even know yet if I wanted it, or what state it was in, or whether 12 years of dust had made it more burden than gift. What kept me up was the shape of the silence. My parents hadn't lost the paperwork. They hadn't forgotten. They had gone to an attorney and specifically asked for it to be handed over to them, not to me. I confronted my mother 3 days later, in her kitchen, with the letter folded in my back pocket like evidence I wasn't ready to produce yet. "Grandpa left me a house," I said. No preamble. I'd rehearsed it that way on purpose. My mother's hands stopped moving over the dishes in the sink. She didn't turn around right away. "Who told you that? Does it matter? Is it true?" She turned then, drying her hands slowly on the towel hung over the oven handle, a gesture that bought her time more than it dried anything. "Your grandfather wasn't well those last few years, Emily. He said a lot of things that didn't make sense. The deed makes sense. It has my name on it, notarized, filed with the county. That's not confusion, Mom, that's paperwork. We were going to tell you when the time was right. It's been 12 years. There were things to consider." She said it quietly, almost to the sink instead of to me, and something about the smallness of her voice made me angrier than shouting would have. "Brittany needed help after the divorce filing. Your father thought, that property could be sold, and the money could go toward getting her back on her feet, and you'd understand because you've always been the one who understands." There it was, the sentence I'd been circling my whole life without ever hearing it said outright. You've always been the one who understands. As if understanding were a chore they'd assigned me at birth, the same way some kids get assigned to do the dishes. You were going to sell my house to help Brittany, without asking me. We were going to talk to you eventually. Eventually when? Before or after it sold? She didn't answer that. My mother has a particular silence she uses instead of admitting things, and I recognized it instantly because I'd been on the receiving end of it my whole life. The next weeks were the strangest kind of quiet a family can produce, the kind where everyone is still speaking, still passing the salt at dinner, but none of it means anything anymore. Brittany called me twice. The first time, she apologized for finding the box at all, as if the discovery itself had been the offense instead of the years that came before it. The second time, she said something that actually surprised me. "I asked Mom for money last month," she admitted, "for a car. She said things were tight right now. I didn't know it was because there was a house sitting there that was supposed to be yours." "You didn't know," I repeated. "I swear, Em, I don't know what I thought. I just took it for granted that whatever they had, they'd give me if I asked. I never once thought about where it was actually coming from." I believed her, mostly. Brittany's flaw was never cruelty. It was a kind of comfortable blindness, the sort you develop when nobody's ever asked you to look closer. I went back to Walter Hendricks the following week, this time with actual questions instead of shock. "Can they legally sell it?" I asked, "if the deed's already in my name?" "No," he said simply. "It's yours. It was transferred while your grandfather was alive, witnessed, filed properly. There's no path for your parents to sell it without your signature. I suspect that's exactly why they came to me 6 years ago, to see if there was a way around that, and there wasn't. Then why keep pushing? If they knew it was mine?" He folded his hands on the desk, considering me the way he had the first day. "People don't always ask because they think they'll win, Miss Carraway. Sometimes they ask because they're hoping the other person will simply give in before it comes to that. From what I understand of your family, giving in has generally worked in the past." I sat with that sentence longer than I sat with almost anything else that month. Giving in has generally worked in the past. It was the truest thing anyone had said to me since Brittany's first phone call. I drove out to the bungalow the following Saturday, alone, because I needed to see it before I let anyone else's opinion shape how I felt about it. It was smaller than I expected, sitting behind an overgrown hedge, the porch exactly as my grandfather described, wide enough for 2 chairs and a small table, facing east so the morning light came in soft. The key Walter Hendricks gave me stuck a little in the lock before it turned. Inside, the dust told the true story of 12 years of no one caring for it. But the bones of the place were good. Someone had loved this house once, carefully, the way you love something you intend to pass down rather than sell. I sat on the porch steps for a long time that afternoon, not doing anything, not deciding anything, just letting the quiet settle in a way my parents' house never quite allowed. When I finally told my parents my decision, I did it at their kitchen table, with Daniel beside me and Brittany sitting across from us, because I wanted her to hear it directly instead of secondhand. "I'm keeping the house," I said. "I'm not selling it, and I'm not giving anyone else claim to it. But I'm not doing this to punish anyone either." My father, who'd said almost nothing through this entire process, finally spoke. "It's a piece of land 40 minutes away, Emily. We were trying to help your sister with something real. You're choosing an empty house over your family." "No," I said, and I felt steadier saying it than I expected to. "I'm choosing to stop being the daughter who gives things up so everyone else's math works out. That's different." My mother didn't say anything. Brittany reached over and put her hand briefly over mine, which surprised me more than anything else that had happened that month. "I'm sorry," Brittany said, "for all of it, even the parts I didn't know about." I didn't forgive everyone in that kitchen that day. Forgiveness isn't something that arrives on schedule just because a scene calls for it. But something did shift. A small, real thing. The kind that doesn't announce itself with music, but changes the room anyway. 6 months later, Daniel and I spent our first weekend at the bungalow, painting the porch railing a soft gray blue my grandmother apparently used to love, based on an old photograph Walter Hendricks found in his files and mailed to me without being asked. Brittany visits sometimes now, on her own, without our mother trailing behind with opinions about what should be done with the place. She sits on the porch steps the way I did that first Saturday, quiet in a way I'd never seen from her before. My parents haven't fully come around. I don't know if they will, but I've stopped needing them to in order to feel like the house and the life inside it belongs to me. I think about my grandfather's letter sometimes, the part where he wrote that he wanted it to go to someone who'd actually sit on that porch and mean it. I sit there most evenings now, coffee going cold beside me more often than not, and for the first time in a long while, I'm not waiting for anyone's permission to be exactly where I am.